Well, I did. I actually did. I thought there'd be a reasonable chance that he would be there. We had it at about 60%. We felt that the hot button teams would be the Bears at 20, and the Titans at 22, with the chance that possibly the Packers at 28 might try and trade up to get him. But we felt that in the early 20s, those would be the teams. Basically felt he had a pretty good chance he'd be there. And our plan really was, based on the board and based on everything, that it made the most sense for us to go receiver before pass rusher, with the idea that we would get a good pass rusher at 31 if the situation presented itself. And we spent a lot of time on Owe as a prospect. The one thing that stood out about him was the size and speed, but also really how effective and at times dominant he was as a run defender. So for us, I'll go back to a guy like Courtney Upshaw, who we took in the second round. Courtney was a dominant run defender coming out, but his measurables were nowhere close. I mean, nowhere close to Odafe Owe's measurables. And we saw the flashes as a pass rusher. We saw his ability to impact games. We saw his ability to disrupt. We also know, we've seen young players who don't have sack production who get to the NFL and emerge. We've seen that repeatedly. This is a guy that's a younger player, underclassman, tremendous physical gifts, critical factors, position specifics on the come. So we think his ceiling is extremely high. And quite honestly, given the way that he plays the run, given his motor, given his toughness, given his intelligence, we think his floor is extremely high. And for us, that's what makes him a great pick. Was there some feelings that we should trade up? Yeah. And so my job is to listen to those feelings and to either agree or disagree. In that particular instance, I felt that it would be prudent for us to wait and see what happens. And fortunately, we did. Now, last year, different situation. We made a decision to make a trade, specifically hoping to get one player. And that player got picked right before we had a pick to make. So that's on me. I made the decision to trade back. I thought we'd get the guy, and we didn't get him. So my job as GM is to understand league value. How does the league see this player? Not just you. And when I look at the best GMs, the best decision makers throughout the course of the NFL, guys like Bill Belichick, George Young, Ron Wolf, guys that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, the Bobby Beathards of the world. One of the things that all those guys are able to do is ascertain league value of the player and then club value. That's a big part of my job. And so if I think that there's a chance that Ben Cleveland can be there at 94, I'm not going to trade up to get him. Now, if I think he's going to get picked and I covet the player, then maybe I do that. And you win some and you lose some. I mean, no GM is perfect. Gosh, I've made so many mistakes. And I'll make them. I'll continue to make them. But I've got to look at the short term of the franchise and the long term of the franchise. What we try to do is compare thumb size to big toe. And the ratio between the two of those things really helps us determine if this guy is going to be an inside receiver, outside receiver, or possible long snapper. And you'd be surprised the correlation between thumb size and long snapping, and how receivers with small thumb sizes end up being really good long snappers. Well, I just really appreciate Lamar's leadership abilities and his humility, especially, and his ability to really galvanize a bunch of different people. I mean, that's a special quality that Lamar has. Forget about the physical skills as a player and as a quarterback. He's got a unique ability to bring all different types of people together for one common goal. And I appreciate that. I think as a general manager, that should be my role as well. And so I see Lamar as a guy who does that better than most. And I admire that quality about him. I've seen him, I watch him, I observe him quite a bit. He'd be the kind of guy you'd be very proud of to have as a son. And I just really respect the way that he plays and his competitiveness and his personality and his ability to lead players. I find that, very, very impressive and They just think he's got all the right stuff. Teams will discount a pick in next year's draft and, for a specific pick in this year's draft. So if you trade a 5 in this year's draft, then the discount would be a 5 in this year's draft is equal to a 4 in next year's draft. And it's a discount because you're talking about a player that you can get now versus a player that you can only get a year from now. But if you really just think about it, a 5th-round pick and a 4th-round pick, the 4th-round pick is more valuable even though it's a year later. So to be able to trade back a little bit and get a 4th-round pick or a better pick next year, we see that as a good opportunity. The other thing I would say is, again, given the pandemic, given the decrease in salary cap, we think there's no greater investment than draft picks. We believe that, we believe that the draft over time has proven out to be the best way to build a team that can sustain success if you do a good job. People will say, well, no team does better than any other team. That's correct. I believe that to be the case. However, I would argue that having more draft picks gives you a better chance to build a team because the draft is a luck-driven process. So if you have 12 draft picks in any given year, you have a much better chance of building a team than a team that has 5 draft picks in that same year. You just do. And no one will convince me otherwise. So for us, stockpiling picks is always going to be something that the Ravens will do. We've always been a draft-centric team. Ozzy's always been the master of that, going back to 1996. And that's not going to change. That's our identity. If you ask people about the Ravens, they'll probably say, strong defense and a drafting team, a good drafting team. And we don't want that to change. I think we were lucky in the first round. We had a double play. We got Bateman and we got Owe, and we were able to get off the field. Feel really good about the situation. So getting those 2 guys, both those guys in the first round, 2 guys that we had as, for us on our board, really top 20 type guys in this year's draft. We felt like we escaped with something really good early on.